This week, I'll show you how to get all your software for nothing. We visit Bang & Olufsen's Danish torture chamber. And John investigates getting emails on the move.
Think of Denmark and you think of bacon, butter and Bang & Olufsen. Most of what they sell costs 4 figures, and yet the UK is the largest market. So what is it that makes us ignore the expense and love them so much? We've been to find out.
Struer in West Jutland is remote, inaccessible, and the very epitome of a sleepy village. It's also the home of these people. This is The Farm, the £7 million nerve centre of their factory. Made of brick and Icelandic basalt, its Bauhaus design is a far cry from the buzzing high-tech hubbub of the Japanese corporations. Here, everything is straight lines and serenity. Even the canteen is a haven of minimalist style, designed to put the staff in the right frame of mind. The story begins 80 years ago, 2 miles up the road, in what is still the Olufsen family home. It was in this attic Sven Olufsen and Peter Bang had the revolutionary idea of making a radio that could be plugged into the mains. They called it the Eliminator, and the earliest known example is kept in a fireproof vault deep underground. The invention sparked a bitter war with battery manufacturers. B&O adverts showed another spoilt evening because the radio's batteries ran out, while rivals said using the mains was only fit for the electric chair. It was the 60s when the Danish firm got really famous, thanks to its designs being exhibited in modern art exhibitions. At the time, Japanese rivals were pumping out bland black boxes. Today, their magic movements have inspired a cult following amongst collectors. But we want to know if all those mechanisms and arty design are overpriced flimsy rubbish. Join us later for an exclusive look at their torture chamber to find out.
With more and more people editing mini-DV home movies on their computers, it's easy to overlook those long-lost memories that are lurking around on VHS. But did you know that you can easily transfer footage from your VHS to your PC? You'll need an S-video cable to connect your VHS player to your computer, along with some editing software. Dazzle Digital Video Creator is specially designed to handle VHS. It costs £75 and comes with easy-to-follow instructions. When you're connected, press play on your video and the footage will import straight onto your computer. Just sit back and choose your favourite home movie moments for the final cut. Now drag and drop your selected pictures onto the timeline, cut out all of the wobbly bits and add some music. It really is that simple. When you're finished, burn the results onto DVD. Your precious memories now take up much less space and are preserved for life. All of those embarrassing moments can be played over and over again without degrading the quality.
I'd like to tell you about open source software, and it's worth you listening because it could save you 450 quid. You've got a PC. Let's say you want to upgrade from Windows 98 to Windows XP. That's going to cost you 90 quid. You'll need some applications to run on it, so you buy Microsoft Office 2003, which comes with Word, Excel, Outlook, and PowerPoint. it costs £369. In total, that's £449. Now, I don't care who you are, that's a lot of money. But on the internet, you can download software that replicates all those programs, and the total cost? No pounds. It's something called open source software, which essentially means it's in the public domain. It's free. It's free, Britain! Let me show you what these free alternatives look like. I've got a word processor here. It's part of the free Open Office package. It's got all the attributes of a normal word processor, things you're familiar with. I'll just highlight this text. Go to edit. You've got cut, copy, paste. There's a very good spell checker with this program. Also, a rather natty function called predictive text. Essentially, the software tries to guess whatever word it is that you're inputting. It's extremely effective. But the point I'm making is that this software looks very similar indeed to Microsoft Word. So similar that I can show you a document I produced earlier in Microsoft Word. Of course, Word will cost you £100. And here's the same notes that I did in OpenOffice, which will cost you nothing. Can you see the difference? Because I can't. The same is true for web browsing. Microsoft's Internet Explorer happens to be free. But because so many of us use it, it's a bit of a target for hackers and nasties. Firefox is one open source alternative, but I think a much slicker bit of kit. It's relatively new and only used by about 25 million people, so virus writers have largely ignored it. Another advantage of open source software like this is that you can tinker with the coding, so in theory you can make Firefox even faster. Its email brother is Thunderbird, and believe me, you'll barely notice any difference from Microsoft's Outlook. All this open source software is written by benevolent souls who believe applications should be free, and all of them are only a quick search away. The free stuff isn't always foolproof though. This is an open source alternative to Adobe's Photoshop. It's called the GIMP. It's got all the functions that you need from this kind of product, but to be honest, it doesn't really render effects quite as well as Photoshop. However, it's a darn sight better than the free paint program you get with new PCs. Night vision. Now we come to the operating system, the bare bones on which all computers work. 90% of us use Microsoft Windows. 5% use operating systems based on a Mac. And for the rest of you, well, it's open source, normally Linux. And if you're in that group, you're in very good company. McDonald's, BT, the Wimbledon tennis tournament, Amazon, Google, and in fact, most of the internet run on Linux. It's named after its Finnish inventor, Linus Torvalds, who created it as a university project. It's exploded in popularity recently, and thanks to the cost savings, is now the fastest growing operating system. The guys who did the CGI on Lord of the Rings use Linux, and they reckon it shaved as much as 90% off their costs. Now, there are several versions that are available for free, but for those of us who are non-technical, I recommend some more user-friendly versions. The free Knoppix Linux can be temporarily loaded off a CD, so you can get to grips with it without saying goodbye to Windows forever. From between £25 and £80, you could buy a consumer-friendly and highly polished version like SUSE Linux. It looks just like Windows, and fans are convinced it's faster and more stable than the Microsoft offering. It takes a little while to pick up some of the unfamiliar terms, but check this out. You're dealing with guys who thank Frank Zappa in the operator's handbook. Although they do admit that at the moment, compatible games are a bit limited. There's a bit of a get-what-you-given attitude on the part of the British consumer. The overwhelming majority of computers ship with Microsoft products, and they've got us hooked for life, because when it boils down to it, we're a pretty unadventurous bunch. Don't get me wrong, there are enormous benefits to Microsoft's monopoly. Dropping into a cyber cafe anywhere in the world and seeing a familiar screen makes life easier. But my biggest gripe with proprietary software is that it's just so blooming expensive. So here's a tip. Give open source programs a try. After all, it's an experiment that will cost you nothing. Nothing!
We're so dependent on email these days that when you're out and about, you can feel a bit, well, cut off. So, what's the solution? To find out, I'm spending a day away from the office, as if flitting from meeting to meeting, in search of the best way of getting those vital emails on the move. One way to solve the problem will be to carry my laptop with me at all times. Using a combination of Wi-Fi hotspots and a mobile data card, I can pick up my emails virtually anywhere in the country. But it's a bit of a weight to lug around. So, what are the alternatives? Well, it may surprise you to learn that you can get email on most ordinary mobiles, but setting them up for it isn't necessarily straightforward. There's a whole load of settings to enter, and you also have to register with the network. And once it's up and running, you'll soon notice some limitations. You'll get the header and the text of a message, but it's no use trying to open attachments like Word documents and spreadsheets because your phone doesn't have the software. The serious emailer needs more. So perhaps the answer lies with smartphones. I tested several and found a number of drawbacks. This tiny keyboard was just too small, making the Sony Ericsson P910i hard to recommend for emailing in spite of its excellent handling of attachments. This orange PDA had a better slide-down keyboard, but it was uncomfortable to use as a phone. The pimply keys on this Palm were surprisingly good, but without optional software it couldn't open any of our test attachments. The best typing experience came from the new version of Nokia's Communicator. It has built-in Wi-Fi for faster downloads, but like all the smartphones so far, it could be tricky to set up. Happily, one smartphone I tried was designed to make mobile emailing easy. The latest BlackBerry. It's a smaller and more trendy version of the one that Madonna uses, and this particular one is available for free on most Vodafone pay monthly tariffs. The great BlackBerry feature is that if your company has special BlackBerry software on its email server, you get your emails pushed through to you immediately, as if the phone were your office inbox. Attachments are handled by being ruthlessly stripped down to their bare essentials. Ours was good with Word documents and small spreadsheets, but large spreadsheets were a no-show. The biggest problem with it is the keypad. It's got 2 letters per key, so it's a sort of halfway house between typing and texting. I'm sure you can get used to it, but I found it difficult. Having said that, though, it was all very easy to set up. It feels like a tool you can really rely on. So it seems pretty clear to me that if you're serious about wanting to get emails on the move, the BlackBerry is the best, most efficient solution.
Bang & Olufsen make posh audio and video equipment, but it doesn't come cheap. Yet their biggest market is right here in the UK, and we wanted to find out why.
One of the things that makes them unique is that style has always come first. The designers are employed on a freelance basis and are discouraged from talking to the engineers for fear that it might constrain their imaginations. You may think the minimalist style is pure Scandinavian, but in fact, the key designer from the past 30 years has been a Brit. With the outside of a product sorted, they then pay attention to getting the insides right. To fine-tune speakers, they use a room called the Cube. It lets them place a prototype with millimetric precision in total isolation to accurately measure its sound waves. It's left to humans who've been trained in the art of listening to decide if the result is any good. The speakers and its rivals are hidden behind an acoustically transparent curtain to avoid any prejudices, and the panel are invited to choose their favourite. The same techniques are used for testing televisions. A special room is able to recreate any sort of lighting condition, even a sunspot. By angling the 2 TVs on the edges, the tester is exactly the same distance from all the screens. They admit CRT TVs offer the ultimate quality, but currently all customers want is a big flat LCD screen to hang on their wall. In fact, there's currently a waiting list for the Bayo Vision 7 TV, which actually uses the latest screen from Samsung. During TV manufacture, the testing process continues, firstly by robot, to ensure the picture automatically adjusts to the ambient lighting conditions. Then a human takes over, who makes sure it can handle a damaged DVD.
Of course, delicately tuned equipment is useless if it's too fragile to ever leave the factory. So, deep in the bowels of the building is a department dedicated to durability. It's called the torture chamber, and we've seen it.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Some of you may find what you are about to hear rather disturbing.
Hello, I'm Ove Thomsen. I work at the Bang & Olufsen torture chamber.
Down here, they test both the products and the packaging to destruction in order to guard against what they call foreseeable misuse. For instance, this machine replicates the journey in the back of an enthusiastically driven delivery van. The television inside has to be able to withstand 3 hours one way, then 3 hours the other. An even tougher test is the machine they call the Russian Road. They'll subject an item to 500 10G shocks to make sure it can put up with a delivery driver bouncing over every pothole in the land. But what if the journey is by sea or rail? Well, they test for that too. A 6,000-watt water-cooled amplifier attached to an enormous speaker is the best way of recreating the rapid 2G vibrations you get on a boat or train. But the worst thing that can ever happen to a TV is that it gets dropped. And research shows they usually get dropped from a carrying height of 50 centimetres. Would you do this to a £6,000 telly you just bought? Well, now you know you can. Not all the tests are so dramatic. Pneumatic arms push components 1,000,000 times to make sure they won't wear out, and all surfaces have to be resistant to various household chemicals. They'll test the effects of hand cream, nail varnish remover, old sweat, and slightly more acidic fresh sweat. But the most difficult chemical to guard against is cigarette tar. A special machine smokes 120 of the strongest brand cigarettes for 10 days, subjecting a television to the equivalent of 10 years in the average smoker's home. TV static attracts dust, so they have to ensure the screen seal is airtight. The slightest speck on the inside ruins the anti-reflective properties of the glass. Expensive tellies have expensive remote controls, and at £150, you want to know it'll last. Dropped from the average table height of 80 centimetres, they need to withstand 6 impacts. In practice, it's 100 before something breaks. The biggest piece of over-engineering is shown by the deep freeze test. He's wearing gloves so his hands won't freeze to the metal, because this telly has spent 24 hours at -25, just in case you live in a cold climate. When we asked them to prove the TV still worked, they were reluctant, saying it wasn't to be recommended before gentle defrosting. But we made them. And after some flickering and faltering, we were amazed.
It's also got a built-in MP3 player with a memory card that allows you to store over 100 songs on the phone.